Okay, so hello everyone. It's Mohammad Ishan here with you from HOFT, Hub of Finance Transformation. This is a platform that we have formed with a vision to transform accounting professionals around the globe into strategic leaders. Regarding my background, I am a senior FP&A business partner and worked on various finance transformation projects. Apart from this, I am also leading the UAE chapter of Middle East CFO Alliance, that is MECA CFO Academy, based in New Jersey, USA. So first of all, I would like to warmly welcome you on this exciting podcast on next generation finance, featuring data analytics, business partnering, and modern FP&A. As all of these concepts are very interrelated and interconnected because data analytics coupled with emerging technologies can be leveraged by finance professionals to act as business partners by supporting their businesses in various operational and strategic decision making by making positive influence and impact and driving the strategic agenda of their organization. Apart from the FP&A function, if we talk about FP&A can also leverage big data and analytics to significantly improve their forecasting capabilities using, for example, predictive modeling, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So today with us, two experts are joining, Mr. Jesper and Brian from USA. Just give me a little bit background of Jesper. He's a finance thought leader and analytics business partner. He is also an author, speaker, and advisor on Next Generation Finance Transformation Lead. And he's also the co-founder of Finance Analytics Institute, based in California, USA. And he has lots of thought-provoking, insightful articles as well on LinkedIn. And regarding the Brian, he's an FP&A thought leader, expert, and international speaker as well. And he's the principal and founder at Kalish Consulting, based in Washington, D.C. So I would first like to welcome you, Jesper and Brian, on this podcast.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we are going to discuss very topical pressing issues and emerging topics of data analytics, business partnering, and modern FP&A. So as we all know that we need new capabilities, skill set, and most importantly, the right mindset and modern workplace environment to act as a real business partner. So to discuss all these pressing issues, we start with Jesper, and also we will take the insight from Brian as well from the FP&A perspective. So Jesper, just would like to start with you from the very basic question, like what is analytics and what is not analytics?
Yeah, so analytics is generally something that we provide that the business is taking decision based on. So if we think about forecasting, like rolling up a forecast, explaining where there is a difference in this forecast compared to the forecast that we provided last week, that's not analytics. Analytics is to provide a forecast that is generated from an unbiased forecast technique. So that could be predictive analytics, algorithms and predictive analytics that we can go in and we can say to the business that we don't believe in your forecast. Your forecast should be higher or lower. All our predictive models or other elements that we look at, competitive intelligence, whatever it is, indicates that your forecast is not correct. That's analytics. That's something that the business will then take, and you can take decision based on that. So that is one example. I think that we will talk much more about analytics and what is not analytics through this podcast here. But that could be an example of what is analytics, what is not analytics.
Okay, Brian, from FP&A perspective, how you see how you can define analytics and how it's being seen by the FP&A professionals?
Sure. So to add on to what Jesper was saying, when we go in on a project and we start showing it, so show us your analytic capabilities, and they'll show us, a sales report. They'll give us, an idea to say, just adding on to what Jesper was saying, is like, sales were down 5%, and that's not analytics. That's a report. You're showing me a fact. And so, what we're trying to do is bring insight to the organization. If it's something I can't, it's something I can just read, it's not analytics, right? It's reporting. And that's where we spend a lot of our time, is trying to explain to organizations that reporting the what and the where isn't where the value is. The analytics is providing the why. And again, it's to be able to give to give your business partner information that's actionable. So that's what really the key is to me. So again, a lot of people get confused on what their analytics are because they think it's just reporting looking backwards. We're really much more focused on explaining, what is happening, why it's happening, and more importantly, moving up the chain to what could happen, and then ultimately impacting the outcome that we want to have.
Okay, that's right. So I will move to Jesper. Can you give some examples of data-driven decisions from analytics and how we can integrate our financial and non-financial analytics to support a strategic and operational decision-making process?
Yeah, so just to continue what Brian was talking about, this why did it happen? So it could be that, again, the reporting will tell what happened and where did it happen. So sales was down 5%, but we don't really know why. And this is where the data-driven decision comes in, and where we can integrate our financial information with non-financial information. So it could be that when we look at this why, we try to do that from an analytics point of view, figuring out maybe that our sales is highly correlated to customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is non-financial data. But if we can correlate that and figure out the customers where they have low customer satisfaction, those are the customers that is also declining, where our sales is declining. And opposite, the customer that is high satisfaction is the customer that is growing. In that way, if we find that correlation, then we can use that, provide it to the business, and they can use that to take data-driven decisions. Now they know what to go work on. What to go work on in this case is they need to work on customer satisfaction. And we can give them the equation here as well. If you can increase customer satisfaction by 1 point, you can grow the business 10 points, because that's what the correlation will show. Stuff like that, that could be a way to use financial data and integrate that with non-financial data to provide analytics for data-driven decisions.
Okay. And Brian, like most of the FP&A professionals, they are mostly involved on the finance and analytical side. So in order to integrate finance and with the non-financial analytics, to what degree they should have the understanding of the business operations and the business side of the organization?
Sure. So I think one of the great examples, and it's a little US focused, I apologize, I am US focused. But if you've, and I encourage the audience, there's a book by Michael Lewis called Moneyball. Also, there was a movie out by same title. And it is that whole idea of taking something that for 100 years has been completely non-financial driven, and that's like decisions on draft picks, like which players do you pick for your team? And for 150 years, it was based on human intuition, basically the history that you had, your experience. And then all of a sudden, if you just strip all that away and just start looking at the data, take away all the bias, that's the big thing, is we're not necessarily telling people that they're wrong, our business partners. We actually are just trying to bring empirical evidence to support the decisions that they want to make. And so the idea is, what is the data telling us, right? Not what we think it should say, not bringing in our own biases. So the whole idea was, all of a sudden you start finding trends that you never would have looked at. Humans are fantastic at finding trends they're looking for and terrible at finding trends they're not. And so the idea of whether it's bringing more data in, using machine learning, using artificial intelligence, it's just giving us more information to help us make that better, faster, smarter decision, right? So we're not talking about turning on the machines and letting the machines make all the decisions. The idea is, how can we leverage all this tremendous technology and access to data we never had before to help us make those better, faster, smarter decisions. So that's across the whole board. So whether you're talking about a chemical company, a beverage company, an airline, you're just trying to leverage the data, whether it's structured, unstructured, internal, external, to help you make better decisions.
Right. I think even if we take example of Amazon, their drone delivery, I think they are also using some sort of data analytics, as I know.
Oh, I think everyone is. I mean, it's just where you are on the curve, right? Everyone's using it. It's just, are they using it properly? Are they leveraging the technology that they have? We see that a lot, where people think they need to buy a new tool, and it's actually understanding the tools that they currently have. Do they have the right people? Do they have the right processes? right culture in order to really move up the curve and make these better, faster, smarter decisions.
Right. So let's move on to the next question is from Jesper. Like how we can build an analytics culture and align it with the organization's overall culture.
Yes, again, I'll follow up a little on what Brian was just talking about. Robert Schwalling and I wrote this book that we released half a year ago that is called Implementing Analytics Culture for Data-Driven Decisions. And in that book, what we're talking about is the 4 pillars here to create this culture, being the mindset. Like Mohammed, you were talking a little bit about that mindset being the start button here. So we have the mindset, we have the people, we have the process and the system. So with mindset, we need to think about the way that we have talked already right now within the first minutes here, where we're talking about how do we use data to take decisions? How do we generate decisions from some insight that we see in the data? So that's the first step. We need to think that way today as finance employees. It's not just about reporting historical numbers anymore. It's also about generating that insight or that foresight. So that's the mindset. For that, you need the right people. It's a different personality that you have if you are reporting numbers historical and you do that timely and accurate all the time, than somebody where you can do highly advanced predictive analytics utilizing tools with artificial intelligence. Is a different capability that you need in that person, right? So you need to think about that when you're putting your team together on that people dimension. Then the third one is the process. If the data is not good, then you're not going to get good insight and good analytics out of it. But also in the process, it's important that we talk about what we call decision governance. So not just data governance, but also decision governance. Basically, that we take decision based on analytics and not based on gut feeling or single case examples. And then the third one is that you talked a little bit about that Brian was saying, yeah, somebody will say, we need to buy a system. Okay, but you might have that in your toolbox already. But maybe you need a system here. And what we normally will go to here is that we need to use Excel for what Excel can be used for. Everyone in Excel is not going to die, but Excel is going to be limited in the way that we're using it. We need to get some like a data visualization tool in there. If you need to visualize data, that will have a lot of benefits for you. If you can do that, you can start to see trend and you can have an interactive discussion with your business. But you probably also need an analytics tool if you want to provide that insight. Because you can, as Brian said before, you can always find an answer. But a lot of time you find what you're searching for. But a lot of times what is really hidden here in the insight is something that you don't know. Something that you don't know right now. And a lot of times the artificial intelligence will help you find these things if you have an analytics tool. So the 4 components to create this culture is the mindset, the people, the process, and the systems.
And Brian, as you are in the consulting business as well, and you are consulting lots of corporations and organizations, so can you share any challenges that organizations are facing in building these analytics culture?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I want to congratulate Robert and Jesper for their book. It's outstanding. So I would certainly suggest everyone get a copy of it. It's very useful. It's very informative. It's also very well written. So again, congratulations to Jesper and Robert. On the cultures, I mean, one of the big challenges is what does senior management want? Because what we're really talking about is change management. And unfortunately, I've never seen successful change management bottom up. So it's very difficult, if not impossible, to change the culture of the organization unless you have a champion in the C-suite. So, for example, I'm working with a company, and this is the great situation to be in, right? Where they want to change the culture. And if you've got that mandate from above, then it gets into what Jesper was talking about. Then it's like, do we have the right people? Do we have the right systems? Do we have the right processes in place? And we can, I think as long as the organization, again, from the C-suite, wants to change the culture, it can be done because you have that mandate. It's very difficult. I'm working with a gaming company in Las Vegas where there isn't what we call a consumer to analytics. Management doesn't want higher level analytics than really the reporting level. And other than fighting the good fight for a while, in all honesty, people have to think about maybe leaving that position and going to work for another company, because it's we've got so much work. I say, we work 26 hours, 8 days a week. Change management's hard, even when the organization wants it. If it doesn't want it, I would say it's nearly impossible. So what you're trying to do is explain to organizations whether they can do the change or not, and what are they willing to make these changes in the culture. And that's a conversation that you need to have with senior management. Typically for myself, it's working with the CFO. I'll just throw it back for a second. Jesper, anything you want to add on that? I'm not trying to be controversial.
No, I totally agree.
So let's move on to our next question is, why does finance need to adopt an analytics skill set and toolbox to become an analytics business partner? From Jesper.
I think that is set in the title, right? You need analytics to be an analytics business partner, but there's some new skill set here that we're looking for you to drive that analytics. Like historically, what finance has been a lot about, and the way a lot of people is talking about business partnering today, is around, we need to report these numbers clean, accurate, timely, because if we don't do that, we're not trusted. So that's one thing. And then we need to have good communication skills. We need to understand the business, or what I call business acumen. And in order to do all these kind of things, we have this teamwork element in it as well, where we collaborate and forming these partnerships around in the organization. That's fine, that's great, and you can provide your reports, and you often have a seat at the table as well. But we're not necessarily providing any insight to the business just because we can do these kind of things. That's when we start talking analytics business partner, where you start to add additional skill set and toolbox on top of this. So skill set like you provide business insight to the organization. And again, here coming back to where we started, it's not a forecast and it's not a variance explanation that you're providing, but you're providing something that the business will take a decision based on. And it's not just data that you're providing, it's just something that will be taking decision based on here. And one of them could be the example that I gave before with the financial data and non-financial data, where revenue is growing because of your customer satisfaction is growing. So if that is the case, right, then you start to become that analytics business partner who's generating insight that somebody will take a decision based on. And that is a big difference here between being like what I call the standard financial business partner and the analytics business partner. You're bringing something to the table, and the business will use that to take the decision. They don't just use like the gut feeling or single case example as a way to take decision anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think it makes sense to leverage analytics to become a business partner. So from Brian, like FP&A functions, like most of the FP&A professionals, like they're confused, like either they should become an FP&A business partner, or we should segregate the FP&A function from the business partnering, or like an FP&A can also act as a business partner. What's your stance on this one?
So it's interesting because when you're looking at it from a global perspective, so outside the United States, a very normal title for someone to have is business finance partner. So it's a distinct position, whereas in the US, it is a function that finance people do. So it's interesting. And then when it's funny when you see in the US, for example, someone who actually does have that title, very quickly, my first question is, do you work for a foreign company? And the answer is usually yes. It's just a different terminology. But adding on to what Jesper was saying, I mean, where I come in, again, trying to help organizations, is, why do you need to adapt analytics? My answer is because your competition is, right? I mean, the way that we've done things is not an acceptable strategy going forward. If you're not leveraging people with new skills, if you're not leveraging this technology, you're going to be left in the dust. I mean, you're just not going to be able to survive. I mean, I firmly, will agree, I'm probably further out the curve than most people, but I think the way that we do business 5 years from now in finance is going to be fundamentally different than how it is today. The skills that we have, the people that we have, the tools that we're using. So if you aren't, it's not just accepting analytics, it's embracing analytics. You want your ability to leverage analytics to be a competitive advantage for the organization. And those organizations that are able to do that are going to be the winners of tomorrow.
Exactly. So let's move on to our next question. Like, how important and big is RPA, robotic process automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all these emerging technologies for the finance function to act as the analytics business partner from Jesper?
Yeah, so I think I'll just dive into one of them. So artificial intelligence. If we think about analytics and artificial intelligence, then there's a lot of things that our human brains can't see in our big Excel sheets that we're sitting with big data, right? Like all that data, you can't really figure out what's the patterns and all these kind of things. That's where the artificial intelligence comes in. The artificial intelligence will sort out things for you that you don't see so that you can provide that insight. Like I've been trying this a few times where I've been sitting with my Excel spreadsheet, and I have another guy sitting with an analytics tool. In that way, like I couldn't find anything, but with the analytics tool, you can find stuff, and then the guy sitting with the analytics tool can say, okay, go look here, and then of course I can find that in my Excel sheet. But there's so much data here in today's world, and we cannot capture that in our brains and figuring out what is the meaningful patterns in the data. That's where artificial intelligence can help you a lot, and that's where like all of these concepts here is something that will help you being more efficient and drive more impactful decisions down the road. So like you should embrace all of these kind of things, and they all of course have different elements in them, but it's new tools and techniques that you need to bring up in the future.
Right. So Brian, what's your stance on the use of emerging technology for the FP&A function?
Sure. So I think Jesper did a nice job of touching on AI. I'm going to focus more on RPA, so robotic process automation. So again, kind of saying where I'm a little bit further out the curve, just picking a time point. Like in the next 5 years, I believe all tasks that are rules-based and transactional are going to be RPA'd away, right? So what's interesting is McKinsey did a report not too long ago. If you look at finance very broadly, I think the number was 53% of finance can be automated, but only 5% of the people. So what we're talking about is that all these processes that we've been doing for 100 odd years, especially on the data acquisition, verification, and reconciliation, that just should be automated away. And the whole idea is then you're going to free up. You're not. I look at it as liberating people, getting your, to borrow from Robert and Jesper, you're getting your high IQ people to stop doing low IQ activities, right? And so, where companies are, and I'm very fortunate to work with companies around the world, but where companies are on the curve, it's all over the place. So there's companies that look at RPA as, science fiction. I was with a chemical company last week in Pittsburgh. RPA's in the rearview mirror. They're much more focused on machine learning and artificial intelligence. So you have to embrace the new technologies that are out there. And I think one of the big challenges for finance and FP&A is we're FP&A and finance people. We're not technology people. And for most of our careers, that's been handled for us by IT, or it's been legacy products that we've had. That's all changing. The rate of we'll talk about even how data is managed going forward, but the rate of change, the magnitude of change has never been greater. And so it's important because the finance people are becoming the decision makers on technology. We're the ones that are deciding what should the new systems be, because it's not about fitting into somebody else's on-premise legacy product. We can look at brand new products that are cloud-based and can just give us the ability to do things we've never done before. So, we want to RPA as much as we possibly can, and we want to look to leveraging machine learning and IA as much as possible. But to give the audience an idea, there are organizations today that are leveraging artificial intelligence in everything that they do. It's not science fiction. It is the reality that we live in today.
Exactly. So there are lots of tools available in the market, Jesper. So what's the exact difference between data visualization tools and the analytics tools, and why does finance needs both?
Yeah, so let's first talk about who these guys are that is out there creating these tools. So if we think about a visualization tool, a data visualization tool, then there's a lot of stuff going on right now about Power BI. There's a Tableau out there. There's Click. Those are visualization tools. If you think about the analytics tools, then we're talking more the Aurora Lights, the Big ML, the Alteryx. The difference here between the two is the visualization tool will visualize your data. So you have your historical data, maybe your forecast is in there as well, but you have the data yourself and it will visualize that in a nice way. And you might be sitting in a meeting with your executives, and then because you're having the meeting from that tool, the executive could ask a question. So it's not a flat PowerPoint presentation, but it's actually like interactive now. You click, okay, let me click in on this cell here. It splits up, right, on where the cell is going up and down, depending maybe on the regions. That's where the beauty is in an analytics tool, right? In a visualization tool. With the analytics, here we're looking at massive data, and we're trying to figure out what is going on in our data. In that way, we can provide that insight. And that's, again, that could be correlations. It could be to dive down to your product level and figure out stuff on your product level that's highly correlated with something else. Maybe from a supply chain, do we have enough products? Like, we don't really see that in a visualization tool, but in an analytics tool, you can figure out, do we have enough products to sell this? That could be something about what's the demand here, and then how much are we producing, and are we producing these SKUs that is actually in demand? So getting that connection, that's what we can see in the analytics tool. And maybe you can say, okay, I always need to have inventory of ±2 standard deviations, something like that. That could be where we start to talk about an analytics tool and what is the benefit from that. And you need both of them. Like, in my opinion, you need both of them because they have strength in different areas. You probably don't want the analytics tool and go in with the analytics tool, sitting with the executives and slicing and dicing through a lot of things. That might be a challenge, but the analytics tool is where we find the insight. Whereas the visualization tool is great for presentations for your executives or for your management.
Brian, can you share any example of analytics tool that is very useful in the FP&A functions?
Well, I think Jesper talked about, a number. First of all, did a very good job answering the question. It depends, it's like everything else that we do, it depends. So I never lead with what's the right tool for anyone, because it depends on what question they're trying to answer. It's kind of the trick question that we give people sometimes is it's like looking at a Home Depot or a Lowe's and saying, what's the best tool in the store? And we basically say it's basically, we've just asked you a stupid question in the sense that it depends what you're trying to solve for. So there are a lot of tools out there. I would say, you should talk to, parts of the organization that have these tools, outside resources, networks. That's why, like, the organization that you lead there in Dubai is important from a networking perspective. We share ideas. So I'm not comfortable saying what's the right tool to use. The only thing I would add is if you don't have a data visualization tool, get one. I think that's just a requirement in business today. To add on to what Jesper was saying, it just helps you tell your story so much better. I mean, people, by definition in finance, we can look at spreadsheets and it tells us something because we speak the language of numbers. But when you start talking about marketing and sales and HR, different components of the organization, you have to be able to tell them the story. And there's tons of research that show that how people consume information, consume your story, visualization can help greatly. So depending on what you want to accomplish, you can determine what the proper analytical tool that you may want to add is. But regardless, if you don't have a data viz tool, you definitely should have one. And again, it's just from an efficiency standpoint, is you'll be able to tell your stories quicker, faster, with greater impact by presenting it in a way that your audience can comprehend faster.
Right. Okay, so this question is mainly from Brian. Like, why moving from ETL, that extract, transform, load, data warehouse world, to ELT, extract, load, transfer, data world hub, so important?
So this is one of my passions right now, so I will try to keep my comments short because I probably could take up all our time. But for the last 30 years, the idea of how do we manage our data typically has been in a warehouse, and the way that we do that is we extract the data from typically internal data sources. We transform it into a format that can be read in the warehouse, and then we load the information that we need. The challenge has been, and trying to really simplify it very quickly, is that you need to know the 100 questions you want to ask before you ask them, because the engineering and architecture that goes in for taking the data and putting it into the format that you want is critical. And so using a data warehouse was great technology. It's what we've had. It's what solved the problem. But that world honestly has changed in the last, I would say, 24 to 36 months, because again, technology has changed. Now we have these tremendous tools, and really think about the concept of extract and then load. And what it's letting you do is basically taking all data. So whether it's structured, unstructured, internal, external, and being very consultant-y here for a moment, instead of putting it in a data warehouse, we like calling it a data hub. So you're taking all the information at its most basic form and at its transactional level, and then you pull out only what you need. Now you couldn't do this before because, again, it was technologically nearly impossible. Cost was very high and it wasn't very timely. Now we've conquered those battles, as you can get the information much quicker. And so instead of being limited to those 100 questions, you can now ask 1,000 questions or 10,000 questions, and the speed that you can get it is just tremendous. So I would encourage the audience to explore changing actually the structure of how their data is used, because again, it may sound like magic, but almost all technology is magic until we become familiar with it. So it's real. Again, it's real. It's not science fiction. It's out there. Part of my job is trying to educate people and just letting them know what's out there. This is something that really can change how an organization gets its data, how quickly it can change that data into insight, which creates knowledge that helps us make those better decisions.
Right. Jesper, your views on this?
Yeah, I'll say it's very similar to Brian. Like, data is so important right now, and how your data is structured is so important right now, and how you can use that data to create something else that is different from just hindsight reporting is getting much more important down the road. So, like, think about your data, think about what you're collecting, and how fast that you can generate insight that the business can take decision on. That'll be key moving forward.
Right. So if we ask about the journey of finance, where is the finance on their journey of becoming analytics business partner from Jesper?
Yeah, so Robert and I have done some research over the last year, and we'll actually publish a paper this week that will come out on my LinkedIn profile, where we have assessed a lot of finance people around the world, different industries. The interesting thing is that there's no difference basically from region on where you are in that journey towards becoming an analytics business partner. So regions doesn't mean anything. Size of the company doesn't really mean anything. Whoever we surveyed here in terms of the title, whether you're a VP or an analyst, doesn't really mean anything on where you are in the journey. So there's a lot of these factors that doesn't really mean anything in terms of the outcome here. But what the outcome is showing is that there's only a small percent that is really operating up there where we will define them as analytics business partners. So we're talking about 4 roles or 4 personas within finance. We call, like, this one we call the reporter, one that we call the commentator, one we call the advisor, and one we call the strategist. And if you can perform all of them, we're saying, okay, you earn that title as the analytics business partner. And what our data is showing is that only 7% of everyone that we surveyed over last year is having that title, or can be given that title as analytics business partner. Simply understanding the whole spectrum here, from being able to report accurate, timely, clean, to get up there and start to provide predictive and prescriptive analytics that the business will take decision based on. So there's still room for improvement here, but I think it's about getting on the bus. And as Brian said before, if you don't get on the bus 5 years from now, you might not have a job. Like, analytics, as I see it, is not just job satisfaction, it's also to protect your job, and maybe even more important, it's also super important for your company to drive top line growth or improvement in the profitability.
Okay, so how if we can differentiate exactly the finance business partner from analytics business partner? Is it just the difference, like he can leverage more on the analytics side, like Brian, if you can identify?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, it's leveraging these tools to, again, provide better service, right? Because we don't have our own P&L. I mean, FP&A is a support role to provide better service to our business partners. So really echoing what the work that Jesper and Robert have done, I completely agree. It is, it's not regional, it's not industry, it's not size, it's not structure. You see outstanding, when we talk about, at that highest level of the term that Robert and Jesper use, strategists, I would say it's like 0.5% of companies I deal with around the world, but you do have them. So, you've got you have a retail organization that, is completely FP&A run. So, they really have that strategist role where they're impacting the decisions that the organization's making. The vast majority, and Jesper, I'm looking forward to the research coming out, because you guys do a great job at the FAI, that most organizations are pretty immature on their journey, but most of them want to move up the curve. It's understanding how to do it, and then it's implementing it. So you need to create a roadmap. You have to understand, Jesper and Robert's organization does this. You need to understand where you are, right? So you need to assess where you are. You have to understand where you want to go, and then you need to build a roadmap to get there. So again, most organizations understand they've got a long way to go, but it can be done if you have all those 4 pillars in proper alignment. Most organizations there's very few organizations that say they don't want to do better. Usually they certainly aren't talking to me if they are. But there's a lot of room to go. And I encourage organizations, people, that's what at the end of the day we're talking about, is to network. And I'm something else I'm very passionate about is talk to your peers and get, even outside of your own organization, and understand what other people are doing. Read the research that's being created by FAI and other organizations. Talk to, again, your peers. Deal with the groups that, like you're leading there in Dubai and other parts of the world, to understand what's achievable. Because again, we work 26 hours a day, 8 days a week. It's hard to understand what we can become because it's just so easy to accept what we are. But again, those organizations that embrace analytics, embrace new skill sets, embrace new technology are the ones who are going to be the winners, here in the 21st century.
Exactly. And I think the roadmap given by Finance Analytics Institute from Jesper and Robert, it's a very good tool to make your own assessment, like whether you are at the reporter level, commentator, advisor, or strategist. So I think that's a very good research and the roadmap given by Jesper. Okay, so the next question is, why can business partnering be so valuable? Jesper.
Yes, I think based on what we've talked about so far, we could all play the role that we did many years ago in finance, where we were what I call the trusted scorekeeper, making sure that we just generate numbers that goes to the organization. But right now, there's so much more going on in the organization. There's data flowing around everywhere in the organization, and if we don't pick that up and be that business partner and provide that insight to the business, somebody else will do that in the organization. So that could be an ops role, or it could be a business analyst, or it could be a marketing department. They will pick it up. And then pretty soon, if you don't do it, and if you don't play that business partnering role and getting out there to the business with the insight and create those connections out there in the business, somebody else will do it for you. And then basically you are the trusted scorekeeper, and probably you will lose your seat at the business table, because guess what? What you're providing is hindsight information that the business know already. Right? Today, the business that we support today, when we go in and we sit in our management meetings 2 weeks after quarter end or something like that, they all know about the hindsight information because they have been in your office every single day asking, where are we in this close? Are we getting to our numbers and stuff like that? What they would like to understand is much more forward-looking. Okay, what is our forecast and how do we get there? And that's where we can help them. That's why business partnering is becoming so much more important now than where we were many, many years ago, where we were kind of having the monopoly in finance of providing data to the business.
Right. And Brian, what you can say about a value addition from the FP&A perspective?
Right. Well, again, why is it important to finance people? Because I think, again, to echo what Jesper was just talking about, your job's going, if you're basing your job on manual activities, that job just isn't going to exist in the next couple of years. So the role, why is it valuable? It's because that's the role that we're going to need people to play. Again, if it's, 10 years ago when I was hiring into FP&A groups, what did I want? I wanted a CPA that was a Jedi master at Excel. That skill set's changed. I need someone who can communicate with the business, who understands what I'm doing, who can bring me, tell me something I don't know that I can use to help my business do better. That's business partnering. I mean, that's what our purpose is, how can we help whomever our business partner, whomever we're working with, whomever we support to do their job better. So, I mean, it's kind of, it's invaluable because that's the skill set that people are going to be hiring going forward. Again, those organizations that adapt will do well, and those that don't will wither and die. I mean, that's just Darwinism. But when we think about the people that we want to hire, right? Who if you strip away all the education, all the experience, and you ask for a single characteristic that would be highly indicative of a good FP&A person, it almost universally comes back to being curious, right? Is being able to really ask the question why. And those are the people that have done tremendous. And now you're beginning to see, again, I'm very biased to FP&A, but you're very much beginning to see, CFOs are coming up through the FP&A track. Why? Well, that's that skill set that is going to be useful going forward. Understanding the business, understanding how finance, plays a role, understanding analytics, being able to talk to your partners, whether internal or external. I mean, that's the skill set that is going to be important and valuable going forward. It's going to be difficult. There's change involved. Change is always hard, but for people who are looking at having a significant role 10, 15 years down the road, you've got to be an excellent business partner and able to succeed. That's my opinion.
Exactly. So, what is the new skill set needed for Finance 2020? From Jesper.
Yes, I think that we've already covered a lot of it. Like analytics is definitely one of them. We're talking about this communication that goes with analytics. That could be another one. Like communication, that's a lot of things, but that skill set within communication is something that we need to build out from where we are today. Today, like we need to make sure that we can go in there and communicate that clean, concise message. But right now down the road, if you're sitting with advanced analytics and you have found something extremely advanced in your data that you're trying to communicate in an advanced way to a business, then you probably will lose it, right? But if you can simplify your message that is coming from advanced analytics when you communicate, then you'll win. So those are some of the skills. It's not just analytic skills, but it's everything that is coming with that analytic skills in a different way to communicate, because it's getting much more advanced. So we can't go into a business coming with our really detailed things about what we have found in the data and maybe talking about predictive analytics and how we have done that and what kind of algorithm we have used, and we then ran a Monte Carlo simulation on top of it. They don't understand that. Like, you need to be able to simplify that complex element that you found from the analytics, simplify that in your communication. So that is some of those skill sets that we're looking for. If you think about from a hard perspective, hard skill set, analytics, but also from a soft perspective here, there's something that we need to improve in the soft skill set as well. It's not just a hard skill set we need to improve in the 2020s.
set. So let's move on to our next question. So what is the most important capabilities for finance to become a strategic partner? Do they need also the deep understanding of the industry and markets in which they are operating? From Jesper.
Yeah, so that's again coming to one of the capabilities as the advisor or the strategist. So that aspirational role, not just the traditional and the foundational role that's really for the commentator, but if we think about this aspirational role as becoming an advisor or strategist, it's extremely important that you understand the industry and the market, because you can use that for a lot of things when you're challenging your business. So like let me just give an example of like a business that is growing 5%. Everyone is looking at that one and say, okay, that's probably okay, but we don't really know, right? But what about if the budget was to grow 3% and they're growing 5%? Everyone is happy, right? And basically maybe all of the executives is running around there, can't get their arms down because they're so happy about that they beat the budget. But what about if the market or the industry is growing by 10%? Then you're basically losing market share. That's some of the stuff that we can easily find in finance, right? There's a lot of public information out there on our competitors. You can just look into that compared with your own business. In that way, now you can start to challenge the business. So instead of them being happy about their performance, when we use industry, market data, competitor intelligence, we can say something about how we're performing against the external market. And that can be extremely valuable when we challenge the business. So that could just be an example of this, why it's important to understand that.
Right. And Brian, what's your views on this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, we're seeing on the hard side, like universities now are incorporating analytics into their programs. So, and it can be at, certainly at the graduate level, but also at the undergraduate level. So, I mean, by definition, the ability to do data analytics is just becoming much more mainstream than we have seen historically. On the soft side, yeah, the more that you can understand the business, the more value you can bring to your partners. Because, I mean, I think we all know, I mean, when you're talking to someone who doesn't understand what you do, you don't really care what they're saying. you discount what they're saying greatly. If they have an appreciation and understanding, then they bring much more value to the table. And organizations are doing a much better job on getting their people up to speed, getting their finance people up to speed. So again, for the audience, I would, challenge everyone. How well do you understand your business? How much time do you spend talking to customers of your business? Have you been, if you're retail, have you spent time in the store, whether, behind the counter or just walking around and understanding, what are the challenges, what are the experiences your customers are having? I know a medical device company that not only do they send their people to the factories, they actually send their people to surgery, their finance people to surgery. So they truly understand at the end of the day what their products are doing. These aren't just numbers. There's a product and there's a customer behind it and there's a service that's being provided. And the more that you can understand that, the more value you can bring to your partner and those that you're supporting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very excellent example you give for the strategic business partners. And let's move on to our next question is what training to attend for Finance 2020 to build a new skill set and toolbox? That's from Jesper.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that I've been involved is an analytics academy that is hosted by the JPK group that is held twice a year, where we are a group of people who's trying to teach these new skills and toolboxes. I'll say also, like some of the stuff that Brian is doing, like with roundtables, there's some really good roundtables out there. One of the things that Brian is doing, like if you can get a thought leader like Brian out there, and if you can sit and if you can have that dialogue around a table with these kind of people in the room, that's also something where you trigger something in your mind, and with that one you find out different ways to do things that you can take home. So that is some of that. That's some of the stuff that you need to think about here with the skill set and the toolbox. You need to come out to these places with the thought leaders, because if you don't do that, then it's just the traditional stuff, right? And that it can be a little challenging. I'll say sometimes a lot of people is attending these standard FP&A conferences, Some of them are really good. Some of the speakers, they are really good. But there's also some of those speakers where you don't really get the full benefit out of it. And I think that's what you get much more if you look at the roundtables and some of the stuff that the JPK group is doing with the Analytics Academy.
Right. I think, Brian, you are already involved in, I think, lots of roundtable series. So what was the outcome you are looking, like the benefits that people taking from these type of roundtables, and especially for the finance?
Sure. So, no, fortunately, again, but I consider myself very lucky. I get to travel around the world and talk to fantastic people. I do want to give a quick shout out to the Analytics Academy that Jesper is involved with. It's an outstanding program. If you have the opportunity to attend, I highly endorse it and encourage you to do it. It's an outstanding program that they have. The roundtables that we have, and again, it's not unique. It's something I'm doing, but others are doing too. But it's an opportunity to bring people together to share ideas. It's funny. So last week I was in Pittsburgh. This week I'll be in Philadelphia. I'll be in Dubai in October. Also in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Fingers crossed, everything works well from a health perspective around the world. But the value that you have doing it locally is you build people's networks, because one of the big challenges that we have in FP&A is, you don't go to university, you don't earn a degree in FP&A. There's no national organization or international organization like AICPA or CIMA that supports it, and it's not well defined. And so the value that you have in getting together, so whether it's attending a conference, and like Jesper said, some are good, some are not so good, some are outstanding like the Analytics Academy, but the roundtables, it gives you an opportunity to share ideas, but to learn and also to network, because where I have found in my career, some of the best insight have been talking to my peers. And oftentimes it won't be necessarily, here's the answer to your problem, but here's 10 things you don't want to do. And that can bring me a lot of value, because especially, with technology, for most of us, probably we're going to buy one system in our career. And I'm completely system agnostic, but, if you talk to the vendors, they're going to, overpromise and underdeliver. But your best resource is talking to your peers who have no vested interest in what product you buy, and ask them, why did they make decisions they did? What have they found, to be the good, the bad, the ugly about the systems they have implemented? Again, that's why it's so important. Obviously, we can't spend all our time going to conferences and roundtables and academies, but it should be a regular part of your personal and professional development.
Exactly. So from Brian, the next question is, how does one climb to the FP&A maturity curve if you want to proceed?
Sure. So a little bit, I think, I'm not quite sure where we are timing wise, but a little bit towards the end here. As Jesper and myself have talked about, it's do you have those four components: people, processes, technology, mindset, in proper alignment? And so again, it's understanding where you are, having an assessment very broadly, understanding where you want to go, and then how do you get there. But it's being disciplined about it. And one of the things we talk about is, it's not necessarily a hard journey, it's that you need to be disciplined on it. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Jesper, what's your point on this?
Yeah, so very similar to what Brian is saying, there's some new capabilities, there's a new skill set that we need to master, and there's a new toolbox that we need to adopt, and we need to figure out how to do these kind of things. And then the way that we do these kind of things is what we talked about before with the training. Like, we go out, we talk to other people, and what are they doing and how they're doing it, and we attend these academies and we attend the roundtables, so that we understand what are those skill sets and what are those toolboxes that everyone else is sitting with to solve these issues that we have and that will come in the 20s here, that we necessarily haven't seen the past 10 years, or maybe we've seen a little, but not a lot. Like, if we go 10 years back, we don't saw it that much. At that time, I think if we go 10 years back, what we were looking at there from a maturity curve was much more to understand the business. Right now is to give something back to that business that we now understand.
Exactly. So, Brian, as you're involved on most of the, I think, the recruitment process also for FP&A, so how, when if company they want to find good FP&A talent, how they can find good FP&A, and what should be the criteria for the selection of competent FP&A professionals?
So it's tough, right? Because we have a very unique skill set we're looking for. I mean, again, trying to strip things down to their most basic level. I want a quant who tells great stories and completely understands my business, right? And those are oftentimes mutually exclusive, right? Because in general, finance people very broadly tend to be more introverted than extrovert. And we need good extroverts. You have to be able to go out to the business. Again, the days of sitting in the office and crunching numbers, that is just not the skill set that we're looking for going forward. You have to be able to do that, but again, it's leveraging the technology. We RPA a lot of that activity away. It's, how good are you at communication? So one of the things that we do is we give people a scenario and we ask them to put together a quick deck. Tell me a story. Again, it doesn't have to be right or wrong, but here's a bunch of data. Take a half hour and tell me what your story is from that. And I honestly tell you, within 5 minutes, you can tell who your good FP&A people and who those are going to be more of a challenge. They either get it or they don't, right? They're comfortable with data, but they can tell a story about it in a concise and straightforward and insightful way. And then it's kind of the business. It's how curious are they, right? If you're okay with the status quo, again, you're not going to make a great FP&A person. You have to be willing to politely, challenge authority, is to understand why. And it may just be more from a perspective of understanding, but it also may be situations where you need to challenge those that you're trying to help. So, you're looking for an extrovert who's very good at analytics, who's a good communicator. And there are tools that we have to help identify those. And, some companies, take only internal talent because they think, and this is really more in the Fortune 50, Global 50 perspective, but, if you don't understand my business, I can't use you. So they actually do a lot more internal. So if you want to, within your organization, is looking for those opportunities.
Right. And Jesper, I think you were involved in the recruitment of a few days back. I saw you were recruiting some financial analysts, I think. So can you share some of your experience in the hiring process?
Yes. So one of the things that we've talked about here is about being curious, about having the mindset to do these kind of things. If you have that, then I can train the rest of it. But it's about finding these people with that mindset. They don't necessarily need to be amazing at analytics. They need to have an interest in it and to understand some of the fundamentals around it. But they don't need to be an expert. And a lot of times we don't really find these experts. Like what Brian was saying, like the data scientists out there, like they don't want to come work in a finance, in an FP&A environment, because there's so many other areas where it might be more interesting for them. But we can definitely train the people that we hire. So it's all about having that mindset. That is the start button here, and then we can train the rest of it. So I think that's some of the skills that I'm looking for. That's the mindset.
That's right. So from Brian, from FP&A perspective, what are some best practices in forecasting, budgeting, and planning these days in the market?
So, from a forecasting perspective, again, you want to break away from what we historically have seen. What we call, whether it's forecasting or planning or budgeting to the wall, right? You're tied to your fiscal year end. The business doesn't run on a fiscal year end, so it's strange to forecast, budget, and plan for it. Generally, you want to get away from, budgeting has a role to play. It's a resource allocation exercise, and it's useful because we can't do everything that we want to do. But I would say don't have compensation tied to it, because again, you're setting up false incentives. If you incent people to beat the budget, don't be surprised if they're highly focused on beating the budget. From a forecasting perspective, again, it depends how the organization is going to use it. I mean, we hear, moving to rolling forecasts. I think organizations should, but only to the extent that decisions are going to be made based on the analysis that we're providing. If nobody's using the analysis that you're providing, stop doing that analysis. Find out what's important to them. Talk to your partners. Same thing on the planning perspective. The idea is you want to be able to get as close to real time as possible. So you can update your plan, you can update your forecast. The tools are out there. It's being able to leverage the data you have. So if you're in retail and you've got access to point of sale in near real time, you want to be able to pull that data that you can help you make, again, better, faster, smarter decisions. So really the way I kind of look at it is when you look at your processes, does it really reflect where the world is today? Because you think about something like budgeting, we're coming up on about the 100th anniversary of the annual budget, and how much value does it have today? Again, you want to be doing these activities so that the business runs better. And if these activities aren't helping the business run better, you need to think about better ways to do it.
Okay. And Jesper, at FAI, Finance Analytics Institute, you prefer any best practices in the field of even forecasting or even analytics?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about forecasting, and especially unbiased forecasting. Unbiased forecasting comes from something that is not influenced by a business leader. So there's a lot of times where you, or maybe yourself, maybe even finance, right, where we say, okay, we used to grow 5%, so our forecast should be around 5%. But what about if your data, when you start to analyze, it tells a different story? Then that is a number, and there is some techniques out there with predictive algorithms, like market intelligence, correlations to other external factors and stuff like that, that you can use to validate that forecast. The strongest forecast really comes from when the business forecast ties to what you see in your other models that is unbiased, that is not having anything influenced by either yourself or your own opinion or somebody else's opinion. If you can get there where you have these two methods meet each other, that's where you have a really strong forecast or a really strong budget. But it takes analytics to be able to get there. Just basing something on gut feeling or single case examples, as I normally call it, is not going to get you a great forecast, and it's not the best practice around forecast.
And the question from Brian is how people are thinking about ZBB, zero-based budgeting. I think it was a very old concept, and now I think we are back to future, and most of the organizations are still again thinking about this method of budgeting. So how you can see this budgeting process?
Sure. So, I mean, basically, it was an idea that came out in the late 70s, died because we just didn't have the technological firepower to operate at such a granular level. But you're seeing, again, because people have a much better understanding of their data, the idea of having kind of a bottom-up budgeting or planning process is attractive for a number of reasons. But certainly you still want to have the control from top down. So what I typically see is a hybrid that people are trying to incorporate elements of ZBB to help them make a better plan forecast or budget. But it's something, again, people should explore, because even though it was introduced and died nearly 40 years ago, because technology has changed, because the data firepower we have is so much greater, people I think should definitely revisit it.
So what about the rolling forecast? I think it's also quite useful in the forecasting process.
So, I mean, it's a question of, is it going to be used? I mean, I think it's a much better way. You don't want to forecast to the wall that we typically do. But is someone going to make a decision on it? So I've actually seen organizations, new CFO, that's a great change agent, comes in and he or she wants rolling forecast, they introduce it, and then there's a change at CFO level, the next new one doesn't care about it. So it's like all analytics. They can be valuable if someone's going to consume them and make a decision based on it.
So in the rolling forecast, if usually own that process? Like, is it comes from the operations, marketing, sales, we can say, or the finance should collaborate with them for this process?
I mean, I'm always going to argue it should be coming from finance. I don't know Jasper's thoughts on it.
I agree. Everything forecast related should be owned by finance.
Okay. And why is the standardization of reporting so valuable from the Brian?
So again, another one of my passions, and I encourage people to explore. It's a nonprofit, open source. It's called the International Business Communication Standards. And again, very basically, is that similar things should look similar and different things should look different. And what the real driver is efficiency, right? Usually we only have maybe 5 minutes to talk to our boss or to the board or to someone on the C-suite. And if we spend 3 of the minutes explaining what they're looking at, it's not a very useful exercise. Whereas if they're familiar with how information is presented to them, then you spend 0 time explaining what you're looking at and focused on what it's telling you. So in your presentations, I would highly encourage them to look similar. So as an exercise, if you have people reporting to you, ask them to put a presentation together for you and then look at how different. I mean, you're basically asking people to be artists, figure out the color and how it should look and, all of that. And it's fascinating how different people present information. Well, you should be freeing people from that. That's not their value. That's not what your finance people's value is. Their value is in presenting the analytics, not how they look. So to the extent that you can standardize how things are looked and presented, it's a much more efficient way to do things.
Right. So just before closing, if Jesper, you want to go any closing remarks for early to young accounting and finance professionals who are trying to progress in their career, any just quick advice if you can give?
I think adopt analytics. It will be good for job satisfaction, for your own satisfaction in the way that you do your work. And then it will also be good for the growth of the company, right? Top line as well as the margin.
Okay, Brian, if you can give some advice for young accounting finance professionals.
Absolutely, be aspirational. Think about where you want to be in 5 years. And again, it's the same model. Think about where you are today, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. What are the skills you're going to need? What's going to make you valuable to your organization? Again, analytics is the future. So to the extent that you are better at it, then you're going to have greater value to your organization. But as Astor has said, it's greater level of satisfaction. I mean, again, we don't want high IQ people doing low IQ activities. So, talk, network now. Don't network when you need a network. I deal with people all the time that they get in a circumstance like, oh, I really could use a network right now. It's like, yeah, well, it's hard, discipline, and you've got to do it today when you don't, necessarily need it, but you have to build it today. So, build your networks, learn as much as you can, be as inquisitive. There's a tremendous amount of information out there, whether it's in your organization, outside your organization. Every day ask the question why about some topic, and keep learning.
I think that's a very valuable advice. So thank you very much, Jesper and Brian, for your time and for such valuable insights on analytics, business partnering, and FP&A side. And thank you very much.
Good day. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Good day.